Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Finance, Insurance, and Admin Committee meeting for May 16th, 2023. Present today are Councilman Clunt and Councilman Clay, City Attorney Paul Jensen, Finance Officer Phillips, myself, and we have two guests, Mike Scott from Economic Development and our MRES Scholarship Award winner, Melanie Brozek. The agenda today is to go ahead and recognize Melanie for the MRES Scholarship Award. Winter Area Chamber of Commerce, Mike Scott. Finance Officer Phillips will have an update on the FEMA grant application, and then we will start taking a look at revenue numbers for the city budget that will be passed in October. First of all, Melanie, we don't have a very great diploma or certificate, but we want to take this moment. I'm going to recognize you in front of the camera. I'm going to turn you around and let you smile at everybody out there. And I want to congratulate you on this award. It's really an honor. It's good to see our dollars here in the city go back to a student that can use them coming forward. So congratulations and thank you.
Congratulations. Feel free to stay if you'd like, but
Or you can go.
or you can go. Thanks for coming, Melanie. Congratulations.
Our antivirus wouldn't let me open the official one, so I had to create a very.
Use it wisely. Enjoy USD. Make us all proud.
You'll have a good time. It's a great school. You guys must be the only two in winter that went there.
Chase Frank, this council is now starting to diversify.
There you go.
We're now going to move on to the Winter Area Chamber of Commerce Director, Mike Scott. Mike, the podium, the cameras are down. We'll have a new one, but the audio is still there.
Just come sit up here.
Or you can sit at the
Yeah, why
table
don't you
if you'd
come
like
up here
to,
so you
Mike.
don't have to stand up there, Mike.
We'll put you right by Jeremy.
Yeah.
If I may, Mike, I think the committee approved your dates before Jeremy was on this committee. So in a previous committee, previous to this new term, Jeremy, Mike presented several dates for Main Street block-offs, for malt beverage licenses, liquor licenses, different things like that. And they were all approved via committee. In fact, it was adjusted for one of them during Barbecue Pit Row to go until midnight. And so he's just here to expound on that a little bit.
Right. Was able to visit with Chandra yesterday with our upcoming events. A couple of the things that we definitely need help with from the city, especially with your changing of trash companies, is helping us with, did you call it no tipping?
Yeah.
Yeah, far as helping with, providing us with some totes and also some trash, 6-yard and 4-yard trash containers, if possible. Really where we need the help with that is our Barbecue Pit Row for keeping on top of trash. And also, we have 2 other events happening. We'll be during the fair with our concert that we're doing, as well as our bronc riding over Labor Day. We also talked a little bit about if there'd be totes available, if that's the direction that the city wants to help us for our 2 summer nights that we're doing. So I know Heartland in the past was able to help us out with that. Just trying to make it, keep the trash to a minimum, and also the part of the cost for the events. So that's what I'm requesting the city to do to help us with that.
I did speak with Troy about this. So ultimately, rather than getting our river bottom involved, our city employees and the sanitation department can take the totes dumpsters down there the day before, and then they pick them up themselves. So there wouldn't be anything going through river bottom. It would just be our employees that would be taking that responsibility on. So the portion that would go to river bottom, which again, not part of our technical contract with them because this is just a special event, that wouldn't be there. So ultimately, I think what we're looking at is the potential of either billing and asking for that to be waived of our rates or something else to that nature.
The beauty of owning our own totes and dumpsters.
And we do also, we'll supply the trash bags for the totes to help, as far as ease of the trash and cleanliness of the totes and that type of stuff.
What about 300-gallon totes? I would think they would be feasible, and
Availability would just be the only thing
yeah, I
there.
don't know how many we have. That'd be a Troy discussion, but I just wonder, instead of messing with a dumpster and that might be a little harder. A 300-gallon tote, I imagine they could just get it with a forklift or something and load them and haul them off. You don't need trash bags for that or anything.
We'll still need a few of the totes out there just for, at the tables and stuff. I mean, I think there still needs to be some of those.
So the process that we're really starting to refine, we would have to bill you according to the resolution as far as man hours and the equipment. I don't think the totes are on there,
They're not.
but man hours to place them, and then it's a matter of council at that point, bringing it back once you have the invoice, and then council waiving that. But I'm guessing, we talk about all the time, the city of Winter with their own economic development and helping out different charitable contributions. This would be one way that they could do that.
Right. And that's one thing Heartland did help us in the past on that too, so
Right.
whatever help we can get from the city.
I'd be fine to pass whenever they have an event to do what Heartland did.
Yeah.
So Mike doesn't have to come here before every single summer night and every single weekend event. And coordinate that through Chandra and Troy.
Just come back one time with the total invoice for all of it, and then let you guys waive
Tally
it.
it up, I mean, we're gonna waive it anyway.
Yeah,
Just tally it up over the summer, and then at the end of the summer,
Right.
you might owe, whatever, $2,000, and we're gonna waive it.
Yeah.
You'd be responsible for the late fees, though.
But I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think
Welcome
we
to the
need
finance
to,
committee.
we don't need to do a bill every time, so then it comes through council to vote on waiving it. Just tally it up over the summer, and then Mike can just call Chandra and say, hey, just a reminder, I need dumpsters next Thursday for summer night, rather than having to come to me 8 times.
I agree.
summer.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mr. Scott,
Is that it?
anything else?
Nope.
Yeah, we got your back.
Perfect.
We'll make that happen.
Thanks for
All
that,
right, see you later.
Yep, see ya.
Table will now be turned over to Finance Officer Chandra Phillips regarding the FEMA grants.
So again, this was something that was started previous to the new, there's nothing in your packet about it.
Okay.
Previous to this committee with Mr. Clay on it. In January of 2023, our emergency manager, John Burdette, contacted me and all of the townships in Tripp County, asked us to come up with a list of things that may or may not have been damaged or time spent during the first major winter event in December, which was December 12th through the 16th. And if the county as a whole could come up with a certain amount of money, then we could apply for FEMA and then go from there. That happened. So FEMA did award Tripp County with an emergency disaster declaration. They actually expanded the dates from December 12th through the 25th. And each individual entity now can apply on behalf of themselves. So we're not combined with Tripp County, we're not combined with each township. It's just City of Winter putting their stuff in, just each township putting their stuff in. So there are 4 levels of this grant that we're applying for. The first is emergency, and by FEMA standards, when it comes to a snow event, there is a strict 48-hour rule of your most expensive overtime during that 48 hours for snow removal. So we have that covered. We know what dates that is. It's actually December 15th, 14th and 15th. And we've got that covered. The next one is for any snow removal for emergency purposes, and that's for all of those dates. Again, just overtime is what they will pay for on that, because ultimately you've budgeted for those out, for any regular hours during that time. So they're willing to reimburse you for overtime and equipment used. So that's a major one, and we would
What
go
about
off of the FEMA
fuel?
rates.
Excess fuel, is that part of it?
So your equipment rates that FEMA will reimburse you for include fuel in there.
Okay.
So it's not just it's a pretty high number. It's higher than what our reimbursement rates are. And so each piece of equipment has to have a model, serial, VIN, whatever it is, put down how many hours. Obviously, those hours need to match up with what our employee hours are, except in some cases, generators sometimes were used. We had a skid steer that sat, our skid loader, that held a pole up for 24 to 48 hours because the snow had knocked it down, so we can use that entire 48 hours. The third is any major infrastructure damage that happened during that time, then we can request reimbursement for all wages, all purchases, everything with that. There was one major damage, and that was a line, an electrical line that went down with 2 poles. I believe it was over by West Haven. And so again, that's where that skid loader was holding it up. We had to replace 2 poles and some wires. So that'll be one way that we can apply as well.
Didn't a bunch of fence go down at the airport?
Some.
We would have to 100% prove that it was due to just that snowstorm. And that I'm not sure if we can, but we sure as heck can try.
That's what had happened, I don't know if you can prove it. but-
Yep. It's the same as our snow blower. I guess actually that comes under the infrastructure side too. We found that one. Our snow blower, some bearings or the transmission, something, I'm
Bearings,
sorry,
yeah.
I don't know enough about equipment, but it went out. And it was ultimately because it's not meant for that wet, heavy snow.
Right.
So they did ask us to go ahead and apply for reimbursement on that fix, as long as we've got all the documentation out there of our maintenance program, every time the oil's been changed, all of that. So that's another infrastructure. And I agree, we should look into the airport fence.
I don't know how much damage, but I mean, it looked like it would be,
Every time I heard Troy talk about it, it was a simple fix, so I guess I hadn't really thought about it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely worth looking into.
Yep.
And then the final one is debris cleanup.
Simple fixes still cost money. I bet it's still gonna be $3,000,
Sure.
even if we do it ourselves.
Yeah,
I bet
and we
it
can
could.
reimburse, and we'll get reimbursed for our employees' time on that, and so, but that would be something I'll have to ask for an extension on, because I have 60 days to get all of this, and everything has to be completed, so I'll make sure and get that information ASAP.
a quick phone call to Dave and ask him
Yeah,
what that would be fixed. If he said, oh, it took half a day, then. he
Yeah.
probably could mess
Yeah.
it up.
yep. Have him take some pictures of the damage so that we have that documentation. That is one thing that FEMA is very, very serious on. Documentation. Where the poles went down, we have to give them the lat and long. Where trees are down, we have to give them the lat and long. So all of our debris cleanup that we actually, all those trees that we had to clean up during spring
Lat and long,
cleanup
you
week.
mean latitude and longitude?
Yes.
I know what you meant.
I'm sorry.
GPS coordinates.
Thank
Maybe
you.
not everybody understands lat and long.
Sure. All the trees that we picked up during spring cleanup, those are something that we can turn back in as debris cleanup, because those fell and were broke during that first storm, during that heavy stuff. So, we have to provide GPS coordinates, to where our tree pile is. Kelly and his crew have actually put all the trees from cleanup and from our parks from those snowstorms into a separate pile so that we can keep track of that. And then FEMA does it based off of the, how big that pile is. And then we have a few in our parks that need to be removed as well due to some pretty major damage. So Troy and Marty and Kelly are working on that, but, at this point in time, we have about 50 days now to complete everything. If we are unable to burn the tree pile within the next 50 days, or the airport fence or anything like that, we have to just apply for an extension on that 60 days through the state, and that's not that hard, is what I'm told. So I have meetings set up with FEMA and the state every Thursday morning at 10 a.m. If anyone ever wants to come in, listen to that, they're welcome to. They encourage council and mayor to come in and be part of that. Because ultimately, once it's all said and done, then council and mayor have to approve the official final submission of it. So FYI on that one. This will help with the overage in fuel, where we can get reimbursed some man hours. Oh, speaking of man hours, one of the things I was running into is one of the only times you will hear me say that it's a pain that we had so many salaried employees, because your salaried employees were the ones that were out there the most during these snow events. Kurt, Troy, Kelly, Mark, Rich, and I was afraid we wouldn't be able to get much for reimbursement on that. Because we have the time tracking for salaried employees policy, we can submit their hours above 40 hours during that time period. And we will get reimbursed at an hourly rate for those. Any time that I spend on collecting this information can get reimbursed as well. So something for you guys to know that that'll be out there too. Questions on that? Okay. Budget. I warned you guys last night, it looks different. It looks very different. And that's because it'll be in an uploadable format for Encode, so then we can just plug it into one and then upload it and it'll automatically go on there rather than me typing back and forth. The way I used to do it, I would print a sheet, type it into an Excel, and then when we were done, I would type it back into Encode. This way I didn't have to type the 3, 4, 5 years previous. It's already on there for me. And then I will start inputting into the Excel format what you guys are saying for 2024. Jody and I are going to get together this week, put our projections in for the revenues so that everyone has that for their individual department or funds.
Enterprise.
And that way we can start building the expenses based off of the revenues at that time. So the first 10 pages, I believe, are just your revenues. That's not even 10 pages, it's 4 pages, sorry. First 4 pages are revenues. And I didn't do a page break for each one because revenues are so much shorter. I can do a page break for each one if that would be easier. It does tell you which fund it does belong to. So first page, general fund. Second page has communications, 911, pool bond, water, electric, sewer, airport.
I don't know if it's possible, Shannon, but it would make it easier, this up here. If that was on the top of every page.
Sure,
that would
freeze
just-
paint it. Yep.
Huh?
Sorry.
It's just, I'd have to train my mind, okay, this 21 budget, it's great information, but I don't know if it's possible that that's on top of every page, and it just keeps
It
me
is.
from having to refer back to make sure, okay, which line am I on here?
Yep, I can absolutely do that. I just printed the expenses off today. I don't like the way it printed off for you. It split the non-departmental fund into 3 different pages. And I think that's just because it was trying to fit it on there, and there's so many different notes on that non-departmental, because of Culture and Rec and because of the contingency fund, so that I'm gonna work on that too. So my goal is to make this user-friendly for you guys. So I think that's a great idea, Mr. Clay. I also am going to look into, is it possible to print the lines so that it's easier to follow from each explanation over to the line it goes to. I know how that can sometimes get lines down and different things.
Just if every other line was just a highlighted shade gray.
Yep, that is possible. And actually, well, yeah, I was having some issues exporting it over into the Excel, so I just need to spend the time to make it look nicer.
So on these, the total budget line is what was projected?
That is correct. Total budget is what you budgeted. Total activity is what actually came in.
I had a question when I was just looking at this, and I'm sure it's in a tax or category or something in the general fund, or the new business ventures beside my office, those fees, or did they reflect?
Yep, those
in
are
here
under
somewhere.
fines. So.
What's that?
It's under 101, 3,500, 35,000, fines and forfeits.
Okay.
So you actually, they're not renewing this year. So,
Okay.
they felt 10,000 was too much.
Yeah,
The finance committee said they wouldn't waive on that, so they're not renewing, so there was just 1 year where you received that $10,000.
okay.
I think you said it was gonna be fine.
Should be. So now that's what I'm looking at.
It doesn't reflect a $10,000 income.
Unless somebody didn't put it into that line, they put it into a different one, so let me just take a look. Twenty 22. They actually put it into 3,200. They put it under licensings and permits. So 2022 total activity was 36,775,
Okay,
which actually would make more sense for it to be under licensing and permits versus fines.
On my sheet here, licensing, 32,001, you said?
The one right above that. So that's for our AR, which again, like I said last night, is having some issues. It's the one right above that that's not AR.
that hasn't been paid yet, apparently, huh?
No, because they didn't renew in 2023. They're a May renewal, so they received it in May of 2022. They have no intention of renewing this year.
When does that expire?
June 1st, I do believe.
Anything else?
If I may have a little leeway, a conversation was brought into my office yesterday, discussing why I care so much about making sure that everyone has a sales tax license in the city of Winter. I think I've made it apparent to council, but maybe not apparent to the public, why sales tax is so important. You guys, as council, see our sales tax has gone up exponentially over the last 3-4 years. You've seen how our third penny, which is paying for our pool bond so that we can get that paid off, so our capital debt is decreased. All of that comes into play. The less sales tax you get, the more you have to increase. If you're going to continue with projects and doing everything that you're doing, the more you have to increase the utilities on the backside. So do I, as a finance officer, have any say over how much each person is turning in or even know how much each person is turning in? Absolutely not. But I can, when we receive a copy of someone's sales tax, submit that into with that application as the dates that they're here, submit that up to the state and say, hey, this person says that they're paying sales tax for when they were here in Winter. One example of that is if a food truck comes to town, we have a third penny tax. And which means that we should receive that extra third penny or 1% on that food truck sales because that's a prepared food. Is that what's gonna make or break the city? No.
And it's based on where the delivery's taking place also.
Right.
I've
Yes.
seen deliveries received within the city limits,
Yeah.
and I guarantee we didn't get sales tax on it.
You're not wrong. And that's, and again, that's something that you as council members can actually report that up to the state. Anyone can report it up to the state. I see that this business A is coming in and making deliveries. Are they paying city sales tax on it? They're not gonna tell you yes or no. They're gonna say, we'll do an investigation. So I guess that's where it becomes, because when I look at the financial, if I just sat here and said I'm looking at admin, building, finance office, mayor council, that would be incorrect. I am trying to look at the entire city's budget as a whole and say, how can I make no money through the finance office, so to speak. How do I help make revenues for the city of Winter so that we don't have to raise taxes, so that we don't have to raise, as in property taxes, so that we don't have to raise utilities and help the utility funds be able to keep the monies that they're bringing in. So that's one way I look at it. There are a lot of cities, so if we want to talk vendor permits, there's a lot of cities that are charging a lot of money for a vendor to come in. I'm not saying that we need to do that, because if we can get the sales tax off of it, it is money to come into our pockets through via sales tax, but it is an option out there. It's a
Probably
big
council should
topic.
be aware of the fact that Chandra has provided me with some good working material to start redoing our ordinance that also includes vendors and peddlers and things like that. So if council wants to do anything different in this regard, now would be a good time to look at at that role of how that fits in here, because we're gonna be reworking that whole chapter, I think.
What's the law say? Was there a requirement, minimum, maximum?
As far as the amount they have to do before they have to report, I don't
Exactly.
remember the number, Jeremy. I know there is a number. It's not all that high. It's not like they're gonna do $250,000 in sales before they report.
It was like $500.
Well, I was thinking it was 1,000, but
I was
wouldn't.
thinking 5 too, so.
Yeah,
Because actually, I'm thinking 600, because I think it's the same as what your 1099 is.
is it now? Okay. Yeah, see, you knew something I sure didn't, so.
But that's the state's ability to tell that person that they're exempt. If they come in and have a letter from the state saying you do not need to have a sales tax, we'll accept that. There are a lot of exemptions through the state. Farmers markets are exempt because you are growing and producing your own produce and selling your own produce. Baked goods are considered under that farmer's market. The jams are considered under that. So there are quite a few exemptions that the state does exclude.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at it, it's a state law, same as your seatbelt. If you are selling any goods in the state of South Dakota, you're required to apply for a state sales tax. If the state denies you, then that's perfectly fine. But it is a law throughout the state that if you're selling, you have to have that. Through this process, we have found that there are vendors through the city of Winter who did not have a state sales tax. And so they have one now, which is great. Obviously, I can't go in and prove that they're selling it, using it. You can go on to the state website, and it is public information as to what you're making your sales tax off of. Is it, I know it's not agriculture because you don't make sales tax off of agriculture, but is it clothing? Is it food? And they have probably 100 different categories that they'll tell you how much money was brought in on those specific categories, and then for your city. So it is separated by city, and it's very useful information. Same report tells you how much your city brought in, specifically in remote cells. So remote cells is a whole nother law that if you are from out of state and you make so much per year in that state, then you're required to pay the state sales tax. If you're an online person. If you are a physical person coming in and out, then you need to go from, that's a different law. So the one that I provided to Paul is based off of another community, because this is a hot topic in all communities. And I found several, but it better defines what a peddler, what a transient merchant is, what a vendor fair is, what a food mobile truck is. It better defines all of that. So then one of the complaints that we heard was, I'm local and now you want to know if I'm a felon? Like, I have a business here in town, and why does it matter if I'm a felon just because I moved up to this block to sell versus this block? In fact, Mike Scott and I had this conversation yesterday as far as what is the chamber's responsibility on getting these forms completed. It's not the chamber's responsibility to make sure that if they have vendors at summer nights that they have this filled out. Would it be a benefit to the vendors and to the city of Winter if he provides a list of those folks to the police department so the police department could contact them prior to when they're setting up? Sure, absolutely. So it's just one of those things that's gonna take communication, and he did. I said, you need to go talk to Chief DeVorick, have that conversation with him on what is going to be better for everyone involved. I've been asked mostly because ESA has a vendor fair up at the Armory, which is within the Armory's rights to have that based on zoning. So ESA, the president asked me, not the
What
president.
did you say? I'm sorry, I missed that part.
ESA, it's, I don't know what it stands for, but it's a group, a nonprofit group that hosts a vendor fair every year, November or December.
Where are
Rhonda
they-
happens to be a part
It's,
of that.
it's the ladies group that has a Greek name.
Where did they have that at?
Up at the auxiliary gym and armory.
Oh, and that's allowable by zoning?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So they asked the question, is it our responsibility to collect all that information, or is it, how do we make that happen? Again, gave the conversation, at this point in time, by statute, it's up to the chief, so you need to make sure and have that conversation with the chief. I know, again, this was a conversation that happened before Mr. Clay was on this committee. Austin, I'm not sure if you were here or not when we had the conversation with Jack as well. You know, is it something that if it's just a vendor that's local, just moving locations, do they need to register with the police department? Or is there a possibility they could register within the finance office? So all of those things are being discussed in Mr. Jensen's ordinance that he's working on.
Well, I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I think we need to keep it somewhat simple for somebody to come have a farm home show or do things like that. I mean, that
Totally agree.
we're not.
And we will.
There's not a lot of dollars exchanged hands anyway, and it's a reason for people to get together for an
Yep.
afternoon, walk around.
Yeah, typically speaking, there's not a lot to it. It's just a matter of taking a couple of steps.
Yeah. Make it known
Yeah,
Beforehand.
before.
Beforehand.
Proactively.
We do
that's
not
the
want
important part.
blame
Blue flame scene.
flame. Yeah.
Again, another exemption, because this came up in Mr. Scott and I's conversation. Nonprofit and clubs, they're exempt. They don't have to have a state sales tax, so if they are selling, I know when I was part of Summer Nights, the softball group came in and sold baked potatoes. Perfectly fine. Do not have to have a sales tax for that. That is a fundraiser for your community. Same with Girl Scouts selling cookies. You could very easily see how, I mean, some Girl Scouts go door to door to sell cookies. And again, nonprofit fundraiser, it's not going in their pocket, it's a fundraiser for their community.
Where the small amounts come into play is where you get your typical group of kids get together on a summer day and have a Kool-Aid and whatever stand and whatnot. They're not gonna create nearly enough money activity, so no, you know, I remember seeing some things on the news where in some town, somebody made a big deal out of it, not in Winter, South Dakota.
Right.
Not in the state of South Dakota, because the legislature looked at that and said, why are we bothering them?
Yep. Up until I think it was 5 or 6 years ago,
Mhm.
I was still already working for the city, but even if you were doing a lemonade stand, you were required to report sales
At
tax.
that point in time, you were. I
So
don't
they
think it was
just-
about 4 years ago.
Yeah, they just changed
Legislature
that.
changed that.
So it wasn't an issue in Winter, South Dakota, but there were competing lemonade stands in like bigger cities, Sioux Falls, Rapid City, that were turning each other in. And ultimately, they decided that this
A
is
lot
ridiculous.
worse than the bling fling stain.
Yeah.
It was the lemonade rage.
Yeah, there you go.
Council, do you have any questions? What do we have now? 11 weeks to put together a budget with all the different departments. The primary focus will be to see the finance and admin buildings budgets come through here, but also everything else as far as the non-departmental,
Mayor, council,
mayor, council,
election.
and election will definitely roll through here. Then you'll also see everything coming in, recommendations from the other committees prior to their retreat. Jeremy, you're gonna see numbers that you've never saw before. Austin's been doing this 3 years, so. it's
3
kind-
consecutive years?
Yeah, yes.
Let's-
He really likes to tell me no.
Hey, I got 2 knowers here. But,
I've done a tour on this, it's been a while. I think I was on it with Val, maybe. I don't
probably an
know.
18 out of the chute.
Maybe.
I think so. Lots changed since then.
I was on it with Jack for 2 years, it was before then.
Yeah, this will be your 4th year. I don't remember. Anyhow, you guys will get sick of numbers.
We're
So,
working- oh, go
you
ahead.
have not looked at any preliminary numbers, Jody? Because I like,
Yeah, I
I
have.
like your projection. Okay, 2 years ago, and I think maybe it's 2 years ago, you're like, we gotta make some hard cuts.
Yep.
And we did. We started slashing and we slashed.
To answer your question, I have my preliminary numbers done at this point based on the numbers I used 2 years ago. One of the things that we have to look at that's different than previous years, we did last year, but our monthly base rate going up based on CPI has to adjust, and they have CPI. I've not made those adjustments, but everything else, I have a really good idea of where things are coming in, and you can come look at them. I'm waiting for Chandra to catch up to me. I'm out of the chute a little bit faster, but I'm even slow right now.
I like to have the general overall,
Picture?
yep, of, okay, can we invest in maybe a new vehicle this year or not? Because the one year when things were really tight, maybe it was the last 2 years, we were just, nope, 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 nope. That's where you heard the no a lot.
Yeah.
Because we gotta cut whatever the number was, 1.3 million or whatever we're doing.
It's based on, the cuts are based on what comes in for requests from the departments. They're,
Until you see those.
until you see the revenues, yeah, and we know what the revenues are, they submit theirs, some of them have an idea where their revenues are coming in, but they've got a Christmas list, so to speak,
Yeah.
and it doesn't match the revenues, that's the oversight, when you're, it's not even oversight, it's putting the budget together.
So,
I have those numbers, and I'm already tracking this year to see where I'm projecting we're gonna close out the year. I have, based on last year's revenue projections, some real concerns. Chandra and I have talked about, we projected water and sewer, and because our meters are not installed, and Austin, you've been part of this conversation, our failure to get those in that first quarter, second quarter, is affecting us. We've got a lot of dead meters in the city of Winter that we're just sewer averaging, water averaging. And there is definitely an impact on the revenues that were projected versus what was collected. When it comes to the end of the year, it's gonna be tough because we have a highway project going on. We're gonna have to, if the general oversight of the budget now for you guys in water and sewer in Austin, you're on that utility committee. If the revenues aren't matching projection, we have to cut expenses. And we have a highway project going on, and we just had, instead of us doing the work on one project, we had a supervisor authorize third-party work on it without, and this is where I need to get those numbers to those committee members so that they understand. If your revenues aren't there, in that enterprise, those 2 enterprises, that committee's gonna cut your expenses, and they have every right to.
well, I've got 2 more years here, just got back in, and if I haven't sounded like a broken record yet, I will.
No?
No,
No.
and
No.
contingency is not departmental money. And they need to work within their budgets, and it's truly for emergency and council discretion. I just have felt like over the years, it's a race to spend the contingency money first. Who can get their hands on that budgeted money first? So,
And yet every year at the end of the year, you've had, that money goes back to the bottom line, which theoretically is just fine, going back to unappropriated cash. But it's a use it or, it's not a use it or lose it, it's a use it or it goes to unappropriated. And we are out of the chute quickly. I don't mind using the contingency, allowing you guys to determine what it needs to be used for, because that's what it's there for. But you don't have to, 6 months into the year, we've got right now tagged 157 of the 300,000, I believe,
170 some.
170 some now. And that bothers me.
And
that's
that's
about what we spent all last year, wasn't it?
pretty
Yes.
close. The other thing to remember is your wages are not at 3.25, they went to 7. And you guys said, let's wait till later in the year before we transfer any money to see where people's budgets are. I mean, I can tell you, both Paul and I, we have very, very small budgets, and that 2,000 in his department and 9,000 in my department hurts me. So I've got the note in there.
But the beautiful thing about these two departments, it's all based on the bottom line of the entire general fund. And the general fund, typically, we send money back to unappropriated cash each year, so
It's not the total general fund, it's per department.
it's per department.
Yes, I promise you that.
Okay.
Steak dinner on that one.
Steak dinner.
That's how confident I am on that one.
You hungry?
I thought the enterprise is,
Enterprise, yes. General fund is not an enterprise. General fund is
Correct.
general fund with departments intertwined in it, and it is per department throughout the general fund. Otherwise, they wouldn't have departments in it. Like your enterprise funds can't have departments in them.
okay.
And so we have discovered through this that each fund can have their own contingency. Contingency for general fund is for all departments throughout the general fund.
16.
The 16. And so if you wanted to build in a contingency into water, electric, so then you, I'm gonna steal your verbiage for a moment, Jeremy. You like the word slush fund. It's not a slush fund then, it's not part of the bottom line.
I use that term derogatory.
I understand.
Yeah.
So when you put it into contingency, it's no longer a part of that fund's bottom line. It's 100% council only can spend that contingency.
I like it.
So if you were to put $100,000 into electric, that doesn't affect their bottom, that 100,000 has to come out of their bottom line.
Okay.
Same as a transfer comes out of the bottom line.
Councilman Clent, she's just informing Finance Committee that each enterprise can have its own independent contingency from the other, where.
Each enterprise, you said.
Yes, and specialty funds. And then the general fund has a contingency for the 16 departments under that. So. you
So
can-
does that become a committee decision or a council decision when it's in?
Always a full council.
It is, it still
Always a
is,
full
okay.
council. Truly, the only, according to the Constitution, as an elected representative, you're simply an individual that has the authority to hear the information and make the decisions. Your power only comes in authority when you vote in a
Seated
quorum.
council.
In a seated council.
So if we budgeted, we'll just say, in a jail, a contingency fund in that jail.
It could be up to 5% of its total budget.
So then, for them to use that, then we have to go back to the bid laws on our 5,000, or 25,000, or 50.
That-
Is it anything under 5,000 they can pull in out of it?
No, they cannot.
Yeah.
Not out of
cannot.
contingency.
Not out of the contingency.
Contingency is 100% you.
No control. Correct.
Even if it's in their enterprise?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
They can, they can work within their budget. If they have, you and I had the conversation yesterday. Due to lack of personnel, staffing, right now, I'm seeing about I'm gonna ballpark this, $180,000 in personal services that's gonna remain at the end of the year. That, in their bottom line, can be used to go get a vehicle if they needed to. But if you work a contingency in there and hold them to strict parameters in the budget process, and put $500,000, or it would be a $250,000 contingency based on 5% of their budget, because they're at like 5 million. So 250,000 would be the max. Committee can make the recommendation on that to full council, but it would take full council before they could actually use those funds. It's not a slush fund. It gives you more control as council over, and the number one thing for contingency is when there is emergent or crisis situations that come up. Instead of saying, find it in your budget, which you can do, and they possibly could do, you now have control to determine if you truly feel that's an emergent or crisis situation, and if you want to spend those dollars with that department.
And it's not part of their bottom line. Same as your transfer, so if you're planning to transfer out, they can't include that in their bottom line, because that is money that only council has the authority to move or spend.
Yeah. So if we were to budget, say we were going to budget those sirens, what department would we budget that for?
I believe that's a fire department, fire EMS. That's why I pulled the fire department over with the police department and the PSAP, the 911 center. I believe all of those deal, and we don't do a lot with Tripp County Ambulance, but that entire committee is set up for the police, fire, PSAP, and ambulance. It's EMS,
I just
emergency
didn't know
medical.
with, like, through dispatch or, with, like, tornadoes, that's more on the dispatch and city side. The fire whistle could be county, could be city, you know. So I just didn't know what department, since both, several different areas
So-
use those same sirens.
My thought on that, to explain it, is the 911 PSAP is a specialty fund, and we already have to transfer $400,000 a year in there to make that budget work. Our revenues don't meet our expenditures in the PSAP, never will, can't. So I took a look at that, and then I took a look at the fire department or the police department. I didn't think it was the police department. But what I liked is both of those were in the general fund, which falls within that 300,000 contingency. And so I made a choice between the two. And the fire department, I think we need to pay a lot more attention to the fire department all around. Last year, we talked about a ladder truck that's gonna get close to probably struggling to get certified again.
Yeah,
I mean,
we were talking about starting a sinking fund, and then we had to cut it, just because we didn't have room to even start anything.
Well, I mean, I think the little bit of the gap there would be, you know, if Justin or whoever, Andrew, whoever's in charge of ordering the inspection of sirens.
Sure.
Kind of goofy to have them in charge of ordering the inspection and having Darren Nelson budget to fix them.
Right. That goes
So, I
back
mean,
to.
you gotta figure out, well, who's in charge of actually having them checked?
The public safety commissioner is,
So then he needs to communicate to the
fire department.
fire department and say, hey, make sure, we need to add this
Yes.
inspection every year. Because right now, Darren probably don't even know that.
He was at the last meeting. and-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Darren has been,
But I mean, what I'm saying is if you have one person doing the inspection and another department pulling it out.
that's the trouble with the appointed positions of public safety commissioner and public works director. They're paid for by all those departments, not any one, and that is their duty, is to communicate to several different entities, sometimes even outside the realm of the city of Winter. And Darren's been here, we're communicating. A lot of thought went into that one before determining where it needs to go.
This
I
came up.
like departmentalized enterprise contingency fund option. I do like it.
It's something to look at.
Council's hands are really tied.
Once you pass the budget.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm saying even in this, we had no say in the siren, but we got to deplete our contingency fund for it. You know, I mean, and this was an emergency, this was whatever, but I think Jeremy had a valid point with they were only 1 year newer last year. You know, I just think we could have talked about that during budget season, rather than hold you hostage when it's an emergency.
They didn't fail last year, they were able to be repaired. And
But, you know, and I'm
My
not
point
beating
was,
anybody up.
if they're 40 years old this year, they were 39 years old last year.
right, I counter you that 10 years ago, they were 29 years old, going on 30,
Yeah.
and we could have done it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my whole point was, we today, and I applaud you guys because you guys are stuck right now fixing things that probably should have been taken care of 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You guys are stuck paying the bill for what was spent in the past, and we limped those, there've been 10 budgets beforehand that probably should have been talked about.
Yeah.
And we got comfortable doing it the way we always did it, just limping it by rather than addressing the true problem. We have 40-year-old sirens that
I
this
have
community is.
absolutely no issue with replacing the sirens. My issue was that they weren't budgeted for. Yeah.
And I understand that. And why didn't we do it 5 years ago in 2018, Jeremy?
Yeah.
We didn't really know, we're learning still a lot about this city. I think you as councilmen, I would bet my bottom dollar that you as councilmen are way more informed than any council before and understand the city of Winter better than any council before.
Look at all the information you guys got when we changed insurance companies and got all that information from the new insurer about all the properties that the city has I think there were a lot of people that were frankly surprised at how many different buildings and structures and little things and properties that the city has.
Jody, I agree 100%. Paula, I hear you too. And I'm a broken record. I'm transparent. I wear my heart on my sleeve. You know what I think. There's just no doubt about it. I feel it's important that the council is educated on what's happened. Staying out of the operational as much as possible, I give you that. There's some, as you mentioned in the conversation, some point in time about there has to be some crossover because budgeting stuff. I appreciate and I accept that. And I pushed you about our committee meetings because it's information. And we need to be informed on what's happening, so when a question comes to us, we have an idea. And I always tell people, if I don't know the answer, I can go to find out the answer. But, you know, it's great to have that information, know kind of somewhat. I don't need to know every detail of what's happening every day, just a general overview of idea of what's happening, so I'm not completely blindsided. And I'm not asking for the day-to-day, I am too busy for that. But our committee meeting structure, but I've told you, I've sat here, and when something comes before our council, and I feel at times we've got a little lax about things, and I understand, sometimes there's time frame, things have to get to council because time frame, I understand that. But you put in a policy, a practice that everything has to go through committee before it comes here.
Try to.
And, yeah, and I take solace in the fact, sitting here, that know that if I'm not on that committee, I have an opportunity to call Austin and talk about it before, or if I didn't have time, I can across the table talk and say, Austin, that's your committee. Are you good? Yes. Okay. And I know that he's had time to talk about it, and I'm beating that to death, but you know what I'm saying.
I think I know where you're going. Mr. Jensen knows my plan. I am going to keep 4 weeks of meetings even coming out of the budget. We will shorten the meetings after budget season to a half hour, try to. Today we're at an hour right at. But your citizens, you are citizen representatives, and you need that information. And that's why we're recording these, so this information is available to you, so you can either go talk to your fellow councilman, or you can go back and review the discussions that were happening. The reason I'm also, I think, as transparent as I'm trying to be, is oftentimes in the past, the information was used as currency. It was, I've got this, and it was only shared with select people. This information is not only meant for you, it's meant for all of the public of Winter, South Dakota. So if they have input, one of the things that sometimes we get phone calls, we hear that some get all kinds of phone calls, some get none, but they know who their representatives are so that they can watch this. And we can see that there's about 104 that watch these committees. And that gives them a chance to know that information also. But you are the vote that's casting their opinion so that they can contact you also. This is meant for you and the public. And I'm gonna keep doing these committees. We're not gonna go to 2 weeks out of the month again. We'll stay at 4 weeks, because I do believe you guys needed that information, and I saw that. On the flip side, operationally, so we can function the best we can, we also found during that 4-month period when we went to 2 weeks a month, there was incredible cross-department coordination to make sure that we were dotting every I and crossing every T that happened in those committee meetings to make sure that these guys were able to be successful and do their job duties correctly. And I think there's a value in that. So now I have to balance it. Budget season, we're full bore, hour, 2 hours. We went 2.5, I think, one day in a committee meeting. And I'm not gonna limit those. I'm gonna try keeping them to a half hour coming out of budget. If they need to go longer, they need to. But as soon as we're done with this public meeting, we'll also go into operational meetings and go back to dotting I's and crossing T's. As soon as we're done here, we'll go back to those rooms, and that's where I will work with the appointeds and the supervisors to make sure everything is getting done correctly. I think we've become a lot better with our processing coordination. So it is, and that's something that I don't think, you go back to the history of presenting information to the public in the city of Winter for years. And this is not a knock, but it was the Winter Advocate in one man's interpretation and an interview on a radio, whatever the mayor at that time wanted to put out there, and it was selective. And we've now evolved into notes that are available to the public. Same two sources of information, but the city is also putting out the notes. And to be fully transparent, now there's a video record, so everything is not an interpretation, it's factual. What we've talked about today is undeniable. And there's a solid record of it. And the people need that, the government needs that, so that we stay on task with the decisions council has made with the appropriate supervisors and appointed officials. I like it. We're evolving still today. I believe we've, yes.
From the personal services side, holy cow, the things that we've discovered with this new executime, from the shift pay to all sorts of things on overtime and all these different rules, it's a learning. It's the same way we were doing it 50 years ago, and now, obviously, as you guys know, federal government laws change every year. We weren't changing with those.
Right.
And so now to catch up on those, it's amazing. Me personally, I enjoy when we find these things that we're not doing and we need to make better and fix. And I think that I try to put that out to council as much as possible too. But with that being said, in case you guys do need to go because it's an hour, we are working on the personal services side with each appointee and department head on potentially changing a few things. For instance, I'll take water sewer. Right now you have 3 employees that are paid out of water and 1 that's paid out of sewer. well, rather than trying to split it, one person, three persons, maybe we split it evenly. And all four of them are paid 50/50 out of water and sewer. Same with your streets and sanitation. Maybe all of them are split 50/50. So just looking at different things like that to see if there's a better way of helping, because all of those jobs are combined together. You don't have one person who's just doing water and one person just doing sewer. It's all of it.
I have tried to make positive changes, and sometimes you have to drag people along kicking and screaming, and sometimes it's a lot easier, but I know what you did with Councilman Clay back in 2008. Those duties were a lot different than what I'm asking you to do today, a lot different. Councilman Clunt knows no different. You and I are kind of, and Councilman Tram are the tweeners. It's a football term. We saw the old, and we're experiencing the new. And even Councilman Clunt, since the first time he's come on to that seat at council, has seen a ton of changes.
Were you here in 19? Is that when you came in?
Yes.
I came back in 18. You
Spring
must
of
have been
19,
19.
I think I had the appointment. Yeah. So I mean, in 4 years, we've jumped decades. It is exactly at an hour. We'll go ahead and break for today, and I appreciate the conversation. We have our work cut out for us in this 11 weeks. Jeremy, get your nose ready. Austin, get your nose ready.